I never wanted to talk about this, not publicly, not privately. I buried it so deep inside me that for years I convinced myself it was just a part of history, something I had left behind when I packed my bags and moved to the US. But the truth is, history doesn't stay in the past when it lives inside of you. I grew up in Argentina under a military dictatorship from 1976 to 1983. 7 years that felt like a lifetime. 7 years of fear, censorship, and disappearances, where speaking your mind could mean you'd never be heard from again. I was just a kid when the military took control, learning how to navigate a world where words could get you killed. Picture this: you're young and you realize that just saying the wrong thing, asking the wrong question, could make you or someone you love vanish. The fear wasn't just in my head, it was in the air we breathed, in the hushed whispers of adults in the empty chairs at school where friends once sat. They were called los desaparecidos, the disappeared ones. Tens of thousands of people, students, journalists, teachers, artists, everyday citizens, labeled as communists by the regime, taken in the dead of night. If you had even a hint of leftist ideas, if you spoke out against the government, if someone even suspected you were a threat, you could be abducted, tortured, and erased. Gone, just like that. My family was lucky. We were safe. No one in my immediate family disappeared, but that didn't mean we weren't afraid. My parents spoke in whispers, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Conversations were carefully curated, even at home. And in public, you said nothing, honey. You agreed with whatever the government wanted you to believe. You watched your words as if your life depended on it, because it did. I remember my cousin, who was 11 years older than me, coming home one day, pale as a ghost. She had been in college when the military rounded up students they suspected of being rebels. She wasn't a communist. She wasn't part of any underground movement. She just believed in human rights. But during those years, even believing in fairness was dangerous. She made it home that day. Many others didn't. We didn't know what happened to the people who disappeared until later, but rumors spread. We heard about the concentration camps. Oh, yes, you heard it right. Concentration camps, hidden in plain sight. People were tortured, brutalized, and killed. Pregnant women gave birth in captivity only to have their babies stolen and placed into military families, raised by the very people responsible for their parents' deaths. Even today, there are adults in Argentina searching for the truth about who they really are. And yet, as a child, you don't fully understand the weight of the horror. You just know something is terribly wrong. Censorship was everywhere. Oh, yes, books were banned, music was restricted, newspapers printed only what the government wanted you to read. The military even burned books they deemed dangerous. They weren't just controlling our actions, they were controlling our thoughts. Even art wasn't safe. So I learned to adapt. I learned to stay quiet. I learned to observe, to say what people wanted to hear, to avoid confrontation at all costs. But inside, I was screaming. I wanted to speak. I wanted to be heard, but I was terrified. So, how do you find peace when the world around you is crumbling, when fear is your constant companion? For me, it was humor. Laughter became my lifeline. It was how my family coped. It was how I coped. I found small joys in the chaos, moments of light in the darkness. Even when the world was telling me to be silent, I found a way to express myself through jokes, through stories, through laughter. And I dreamed. Oh, I dreamed of a place where I could be free, where I could speak without fear, where I could be loud, opinionated, and unfiltered. The place was the US. When democracy was restored in Argentina in 1983, we celebrated, oh, like never before. Families took to the streets, waving Argentine flags, honking cart horns, singing in the streets. We had hope again. But for me, the scars of silence were too deep. I couldn't stay. I had seen how easily freedom could be taken away, and I wanted to go somewhere I knew I could keep it. So I left. I left for a country where I could say what I wanted, where I could build a life without fear of disappearing. And in the most ironic twist of all, I chose to do stand up comedy, a career that demanded I speak my mind, that I take up space, that I be unapologetically myself. Oh, comedy was my rebellion. It was how I took back my voice. So today, when I look back at those years, I understand why I buried this story for so long. It's painful, it's terrifying, but it's also part of me. It taught me resilience. It taught me that fear can silence you, but only if you let it. It taught me that even in the darkest times, truth finds a way. And most importantly, it taught me that laughter is an act of defiance. So when life threw more bricks at me, losing my mother, my marriage ending, my cancer diagnosis, I already knew how to survive because I had already done it before. I had learned how to find light in the darkness. I had already learned that no matter how much fear tries to silence you, there is always a way to speak. And now, now I tell my story. Now I help others find their voice because silence may have been my childhood reality, but my voice, honey, that's my legacy.